Hello and welcome to Information Matters with AI. I'm Jacqueline Stockwell, CEO and founder at Leadership Through Data. I'm an international best-selling author for a book called Blooming Good Information Management. Now, today I am joined by John Woolley. John is the founder of Wolf Not Sheep. He's an experienced transformational leader, a change specialist, and someone who has spent years helping organisations navigate uncertainty, disruption, and growth. Now, in a world where AI is changing how we work, how we lead, and how we make decisions, I wanted to explore a question that sits behind all technology. How do we remain human whilst creating meaningful change? So grab your coffee and let's get started. So let's talk about why Wolf Not Sheep as your business name.
I get asked this a lot. So the inspiration, first and foremost, it stems from my childhood. So everybody used to go woolly sheep, haha, bar, right? But it also comes, I did some research, like where does woolly come from? And woolly is Old English for wolf, which is really weird. And so I thought, well, wolf, not sheep, right? So that was one of its originals. I've always been called a square peg in a round hole, not quite, and I never quite follow the way the rest of the herd is going. So I thought it was kind of apt. So first round is surname as a play on that, but the second one is not quite the herd, the normal, and wolf in sheep's clothing, because I have a technical background, and from a sales perspective, that can be really, really dangerous. So yeah, lots of different reasons for why it's wolf, not sheep.
I love that. And when you talk to people about, business names, business concepts, and like the meaning behind it, I mean, I just thought you liked wolf and sheep, but I love what you say that you don't kind of follow the traditional trend. So let's talk about mindset. When you're trying to drive change into organizations, how does that affect people's mindsets?
Wow, so change is hard. I mean, the most interesting point of my career has probably been the last 7 years, where the role has always been around developing new ways of working. So whether it's a new software system, new workflows, helping customers design and build those, that part is the real simplest one. I think one of the most interesting projects I went through was a transformation of a government service. And it's a general public population. I think nothing helps you understand change management more than dealing with the general public. And the challenge in there was, it's not so much about, you can't enforce change. For example, you've got to bring people along on the journey. And so I think the challenge, the real kind of issue here is how leaders can influence. And I think influence is probably the best word. Influence and drive adoption of whatever it is that they are trying to change. You can't push that agenda. You can't force that agenda. I spend a lot of time in terms of things like sales consulting and sales leadership. And we talk a lot about the forces of physics in all of this. I like to look at things like push and pull in the language. And so if from a change perspective, you're pushing change on something, the natural reaction when you push something is that thing moves away from you. So you don't get that alignment. So I always say that the question for any leader who's trying to drive change is, how do you pull? How do you gravitate it? How do you deliver enough value or enough appetite in whatever they are trying to do to make them want to come to you, to make them want to embrace that change? And I think that's the question that needs to, before anybody starts to push, there you go, starts to push out a change to an organization, the question has to become, how do I get people to gravitate? What is the hook? Why do this?
Yeah. And I think it's so important, that word influence. So I talk a lot about influence with information leaders, a lot of the listeners that we're talking to now, and it's influencing. So, and it's how you perceive yourself. So it's your personal brand, but it's also how you influence information management by 365 within the business. So a lot of people could be lone leaders. So there's a huge amount of influence that they have to deliver onto the business to actually get stuff done, get people listening, get that emotional buy-in. And I think influence really is that word. You can be an influencer within your business for information management, for AI, for Microsoft 365. And then it's a real key focus right now for us to all focus on our personal branding, which aids that influence within the business. Perceptions of, what do people think about me? What do I think about myself? How do I show up? How do I present? Because if we're all saying, I don't want this change, I don't want AI, for example, I don't want, this and that, then that's going to be your impact, and you're not going to be able to get people to influence or buy in for the things that you're describing.
It's funny, isn't it? Like lots of people have an aversion to sales folks. They do, right? Don't like salespeople, but everybody sells. And I think this is what a lot of us kind of can forget, is that if you're a leadership position, for me, actually, is a ton of internal sales. You're selling yourself, you're selling your teams, you're selling the company, you're selling whatever direction that you are trying to go and take the company in. It's a sales job, and there are some inherent skills that has to come with that. But and pushing definitely does not work. You push, either people push back or they just move away. It's one of the two.
Yeah, and it's building relationships. So I'm key, 60% of our job should be around building relationships with people within the organisation, with external users. And without those relationships, you're not going to get selling information management to the business. And that's essentially what we're doing. As you said, we're influencing. And it's so interesting because, as you probably know, a sales tip, it takes 12 steps for somebody to go from not knowing you to getting the confidence, getting the trust, getting the buy-in, to then buying a product. So that's 12 things you need to do with one person before you start to create. And you need to be having those conversations and having that impact and within the business to get change, to get your business cases going, to get your input, to get things moving. And it is selling. And I do agree it's selling, but influencing is same. But it is a form of selling. So you've spent decades helping organizations transform. Why do so many organizations embrace change whilst others resist it at every turn?
For me, and from the experiences I've had, it is how it's sold internally. That's the first thing. But it's also about what is changing. So in terms of, let's just say you're putting in a new process, or I've seen so many times, and dealing with very good friends of mine who are in the records management or information governance business, right? The information governance one is a really, really tough thing to change, because it's like a why bother, right? It doesn't affect me on a day-to-day basis. The only time usually I see this is when, people scramble for let's fix the problem, when usually there's like a legal problem coming in behind it, or an audit compliance one coming behind it. So it's usually somebody with a really large book to throw at someone. And so that type of change is really hard. So where I see the ones that are working, what they've actually been able to do is find the benefits change to the people who the change is happening to, in order for them to understand it simply, understand it quickly, but also be able to derive really fast benefits out of it. So if whatever you are changing is going to take months and months and months, people don't have that attention span anymore. What they want is like instant gratification of whatever they are doing or whatever they are changing has to have something tangible within their personal life, their work life, their whatever life at that moment. So from a project perspective, the ones that I see that tend to fail, the payoff is too far down the line. I mean, think about it. It's like it's almost like going to the gym or dieting or doing something like that. If your results are going to be 6 months down the line, like nobody really wants to know. But if the results are instant, there's a huge long queue. So organizational change is very, very much like that. And the ones that do get it right are the ones that figure out those short gap, quick wins, the wow factor. So everybody then gravitates to it, and they communicate well. I think that's the other thing, is you have to communicate the wins. So again, we go back to that whole sales conversation. Once you start to get people onto it and you get the first early adopters, they have to sing from the rafters. They have to advocate it. They have to be your evangelists. They have to be enthusiasts, so that excitement and that energy starts to permeate out. And it does. It becomes really effective. Once you get one or two folks using it and they love it, it goes. Well, we see that all the time.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously that's change management, isn't it? Have a vision, get buy-in, think of the quick wins, get everybody embraced in what you're trying to do. And I think there's a big thing in our industry around it's too difficult for us to get information governance, to the business, to get them to understand. I'm coming at it from a completely different perspective. It's around people. So you talk about the benefits. Me as a person, I go to a senior manager, I go to an end user. What's the benefits for me? Well, if we do this, you'll find documents, say 60% faster.
Right.
on a Monday morning, right? So that's the benefit to them. In the back end, you're looking at how you're going to do that. But actually, it's the benefits to them to get them to buy in. Oh, well, if I'm going to find documents quicker on a Monday morning, well, absolutely. How can I help you?
Yeah.
That's where the influence, the relationship building and the change management aspects all come in, because you're getting people to buy in to the vision of finding things quicker on a Monday morning.
It's funny you say that about fight, but IG for me, in terms of like working on a project to build out a platform to do that level of classification, it's not the classification that's the selling point. It is exactly that. It's about bringing order to chaos, where you've got large unstructured data pools. Like, how do I find anything in here? And if you ask anybody, like, the number one bane is I can't find stuff. There's just too much stuff. And so if you can find it instantly, it's like mind blown. Absolutely, I'll connect my stuff and I'll put it there. So I think one of the interesting things as human beings, just generally, and I always come across this, is that we are inherently lazy. We really want to do the least amount of work to get the maximum amount of return out of it, right? Which is, what differentiates us from pretty much every other animal on the planet, right? We want to open something. We make a tool to open that something. We don't sit there kind of like twisting it for hours. We go and figure out something to go and get it open with. And so, like, if you can tune in to that level of desire from people, and I think the other thing is that a lot of organizations where they can make a mistake is they believe because their teams, their employees are employed by the company, they will follow the direction. And that's not always the case. Interesting article where one of the major tech CEOs was really concerned that people were joining their company for the money, that they didn't share the same mission as the leadership. I was like, well, of course. Like, nobody ever joins a company to go, yeah, I don't want any money. I just want to join this particular mission. Otherwise, they'd be doing it for themselves. So the motivation of the team that is working with you is never really the same as your motivation if you're trying to push something. And those sorts of alignments, again, is one of the things I think that causes a lot of things to fail.
What advice would you give to listeners who know something needs to change but are struggling to get buy-in?
I think they've got to step back. And if it's something that they're trying to push right now and it's failing, you've really got to look back and do some soul searching, navel gazing, as I like to think about it. So for those folks who aren't using it or aren't adopting it, it's like, go at it a different way instead of, why aren't you, Jacqueline, why aren't you adopting this, to what have I done wrong? It's not being, we're not doing this right. What am I doing wrong? How could I do better in order to make this a little bit more consumable? I mean, it usually stems from the original outreach or the original kind of like push on things. And then if you're going to drive that change again, please, please, please don't call it a relaunch. I've heard that so many times. Iterate it. But again, it's another drive. It's another round of change because it does take time. And so go back to it, wrap it up, look internally. What have you done wrong? All right, what are the steps that you've mismade? Second one is kind of like look at ways, what are the benefits? I always say that value propositions, which are really, really important in communicating anything, could be broken down into kind of like a very, very quick, I have a structure for it. So what it does in order to, so that you can, if that makes sense. So I need a line, tell me exactly what this thing does so that you can find things faster in order to save a lot of time on a Monday morning. And if you can get the value proposition right for the change that you're trying to make, that's really simple. And that structure has certainly helped me over the years kind of figure out how to communicate something. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And we talk a lot about a value proposition on our Empower Accelerator because it's that opening line. It's how you present yourself, how you introduce yourself. And it's also, your value proposition for the thing you're trying to sell, back to the business. Well, one of the things that I always find people with resistance to change is to look at your stakeholders and write 3 columns. So list the people that are already on board, list the people that needs tweaking, and then list the ones that are really resistant to that change, and then target your energy on those ones.
Yeah.
So get feedback. Actually, it might not be resistance to change. It might be something that isn't actually anything to do with your product, so or the way you've created it. It might be something that happened that day at home that's brought other
absolutely.
things in. So, but I do think feedback is a really, really important thing, and to be open and have that growth mindset. So that real reflective piece.
I like the way you look at that, because I usually go to the extreme of nothing's working or everything's working. You've got that kind of like nice balance in the middle that goes, some like it, some don't. But it is absolutely true. It's not everyone's the same. You will have those adopters. And exactly, I think you've hit the nail on the head. You also need to seek from those, this is the piece I missed, seek from those actually why they're adopting it too versus who's not adopting it. I like that.
Yeah, 100%. Because when you look at AI, I'm quite innovative, you're quite innovative, quite forward thinking. We'd look at the positives and the negatives for it, the risks and the costs. Whereas some people might not be adverse to computers, for example. So they struggle with certain computers. So they're not going to be in the really excited AI's coming, are they? Because obviously it's another piece of technology that they're not very comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you got to look at like the technical people that are really excited about AI, the productivity, businesses for a return of investment. But then you've got our community that is at the information management, because if your information management isn't great, garbage in, garbage out, then gospel is carried on within the business. So I think there's those kind of real rationales, but I've definitely found a way of like structuring in 3 columns and then targeting those people, because once you get them on board, the significance that you're just like, yes, I did that. And, they'll be your biggest advocates going forward. So talking about AI, it's transforming every single industry. What leadership qualities do you believe will become more important as AI becomes more and more embedded into our workplaces?
Skepticism. I think skepticism. So I've been working with it for a while, and there are times where I love it. I think it's great. And then there are times where I absolutely hate it because it's not great. And I kind of chuckle and say skepticism. And it's not so much of the AI, it's just a hype around it. That's the problem. I've seen if you see any of my tongue-in-cheek posts on social media where I've had a day of, being sold to AI products and AI this and AI that, and I am just kind of bored of it because I know I use it every day. From a leadership perspective, it's kind of like test, and double down. So skepticism for me is like a big thing. Have realistic goals, like understand what it can do. And for the kind of like the semi-nerdy or non-nerdy kind of like balance of listeners that you may have, it's real simple to look at it. AI is nothing else but a really good prediction. So think about it, it's a big glass ball and it's trying to figure out what its answer is going to be. It's got great context, and don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, but it is making guesses. So if you need something that's deterministic, if this, then do this, AI is not actually required, right? You can write that with standard coding tools that have been around for the last, very long time, longer than I have. So it's like there is a level of realism that has to come into this to realize that you need to pick the right tool for the right job. Otherwise, you end up with either stuff that doesn't work, stuff that overruns, stuff that costs too much. And it's kind of a real then impact to the business. And I've seen this with a rush to like, oh, we need to AI everything. The people that are telling you online that they've built bots for everything and bots do everything for them and their agents run everything, it's hyperbole. The stuff that we are writing today, for example, information governance, it's really, really good at trying to determine what a thing is. It's very good at that. But after that has decided what that thing is, you want deterministics. You want to say, if it is this, these are the steps that you need to take. If it's this is what I want the system to do. And that's not AI. That's coding. That's simple stuff. And that's how we've built that platform. So we use it so again, like be real, understand what the problem is. The problem that you're trying to solve is more important than the technology you solve it at. And the running joke is kind of like the answer is AI, what's the question, right? And I've seen that with so many different things. The answer is X, I'm selling you this. The answer is X, what was your problem? Like if you can get to the problem first and then look at the different types of solves that you've got for that problem and then like go from that rather than look at what the product is and then try and find a lot of companies right now they've chosen an AI and now they're looking for a use case, and it needs to be the other way around, right? It's great. What's the problem I'm trying to solve? Will this help that problem or will it make it worse?
Yeah, brilliant. Right, John, before I let you go, something new for Information Matters with AI podcast is a rapid fire round. So I'm just going to say something. You just got to answer the first thing that comes into your mind. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
One word that describes great leadership.
Empathy.
One skill AI will never replace.
Creativity.
Wolf or sheep?
Wolf, definitely.
What's the biggest mistake leaders make during change?
Pushing it.
You need to complete the sentence. The future belongs to people who
Dream.
I love it. Thank you so much, John, for joining me today. It's been absolutely great. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And what really stands out for me is what, whilst AI is transforming the way we work, leadership, change management, fundamentally being human is a key thing that we need to remember, that it's not going to replace our jobs, because technology can move so fast, but it's about courage, trust, communication, and influencing the business as we go forward. So thank you again for your time. So grateful. And for everybody who's listening to Information Matters with AI, please subscribe, leave a review and share it with your colleagues. Until next time, remember, information matters, leadership matters, and in the age of AI, the human element matters even more. Take care. See you next week. Be bold, be brave, and be beautiful.